Well, hello friends, and welcome to week 3 of our Dangerous Prayers online Bible study. My name is Kaylee Olson, and I'll be your host today, and I'm joined with author and pastor Craig Groeschel. Welcome.
Yeah, glad to be with you, Kaylee.
So glad to have you here today. Well, before we dive into our content, I just want to point out for everybody who is watching that week 3 of the study, notoriously with online Bible studies, is usually the week that people decide whether or not they're going to keep going or drop off, because it's kind of like building a habit. 21 days, week 3, and Dangerous Prayers is not easy to read. It's a hard book to walk through. So if there's somebody kind of teeter-tottering on whether or not they want to keep going, what do you have to say to them to keep going?
Well, I agree with you 100% that so often when you're starting something new that there is a point of resistance. And especially on Dangerous Prayers, most people don't wake up and say, I think I'm going to pray something crazy today.
Yes.
Especially as we move into the prayer, Break Me, which is the one that, just in my experience, people often have the most hesitancy to pray.
Yes.
I would just say that on the other side of difficult things, that's where you find the true richness, the true intimacy. So you've gone this far, don't stop now. This is where it gets really, really good. And with a little bit of persistence and pursuit of genuinely who God is, He can do something special in us. And so I believe on the other side, and in the weeks to come, could be where we really do have breakthroughs in our passionate pursuit of knowing who God is.
Yeah, that is so good. Well, I'm glad that you brought up that we're in Break Me this week, because we were in Search Me the last 2 weeks, which that's hard enough in and of itself. And then now this is even more difficult. But in your book, you talk about that the fact that Break Me is scary and hard, and you say, what are we losing by clinging to our comfort? So speak into that a little bit for us.
Well, interestingly enough, Kaylee, so often I think when people think about God in our prayer lives, we tend to think that He's kind of like the cosmic genie that gives us what we want, and that we want a life of comfort, we want a life of ease. But when you think about it, how often do things like comfort, prosperity, and ease tend to produce the worst in us? And yet, sometimes the trials and the hardships produce the best. And so if we really want to be conformed to the image of Christ, if we really want to grow in our faith, if we really want to walk in victory, sometimes the path there is not the easiest path. And Jesus didn't say, come and be comfortable and follow me. He said, come and deny yourself, and then you can follow me. So I think if people can have the faith to recognize that sometimes the best blessings are not on the other side of that which is easy, but that which stretches us, that which challenges us, convicts us, then we can really walk in something that is not just easy, but can be rich and meaningful.
Yeah, I 100% resonated with what you said, and that's a perfect segue into my story. And so I'm just going to jump right in and kind of share what the Lord has been teaching me through reading your book. And it was interesting when Kendra asked me to do this week 3 with you, God kind of said yes for me. I don't know if you've ever had that moment where the Lord is like, yeah, you should do this, but internally I'm like, oh gosh, do I really want to share this? But I'm so glad that she asked me, and I'm so glad that I'm right here, because I've been able to kind of side by side compare what I've been walking through the past 13 months alongside what your book says. And I've been able to identify, this is where He searched me. This is where I've been broken, even though I haven't necessarily said, break me, because I think He'll do it whether or not you really ask Him to do it. So in your book, you write, could there be something on the other side of suffering that somehow makes it worthwhile? Which is what you said earlier before we got started. But in essence, that's what I've had to cling to. And so over the past 13 months, my husband and I have been just asking God to help us start a family. And that in itself is a dangerous prayer, because you have 6 kids, you probably know. And it's weird because on one side, it's a dangerous prayer because kids are scary and they bring on hardships in and of themselves, but it's also a very normal prayer to pray, right? Like if you've been married for a while and you feel like this is our next step, then God loves kids. Surely this is all going to work out, right? And I didn't think that it would take this long, and I didn't think that I would still be sitting here 13 months later, and I'm the same. I think I imagined myself this morning, like on a day like today, dropping said kid off at daycare and then coming here to tell you how it all tied up in a nice, neat bow. But it hasn't. And so I do want to pause right here and just say there's probably somebody watching right now who's going through a lot longer of a period of infertility than I am, or your struggle might be way harder than mine is. But for everybody who's going through suffering, this is your first time through that journey. And so 13 months still feels like a really long time for me. And so wherever you are, there's so much compassion that Proverbs has for you. But before I go into what God has shown me in this process, I do want to go back to Search Me, because I found specifically what God showed me through that part of your book. I think you were writing about when your wife Amy got sick after giving birth to one of your children, and you closed that chapter with, what fears are you withholding from God? And this is one of those mind blown moments where, for me, the idea of withholding something from God kind of looked like this wall that I had built up between me and God, not necessarily to try to keep him out, but to protect my heart from being broken. Because nobody wants that. I mean, like you said it earlier, nobody wants to invite brokenness into their lives. And so I think I built this wall up, and it was kind of like I just gave myself low expectations, and I was like, okay, God, anytime, we're good, I'm good. When I don't know what I was thinking that would actually help, but I built this wall up between me and God, but then I also did it with people who were close to me, or people who didn't really know what was going on, and they would say, how are you? How can I pray for you? And I would joke it off and say like, oh, I'm good, we're good, we're fine, which, typically that's a sign that somebody doesn't really want to talk about what's going on in their heart. And I said stuff like that because I was just fearful that the worst would happen, and in a sense it kind of has, because I'm still here in the middle, kind of waiting. And I was just afraid that if I exposed my heart's desires to the Lord and to my friends, that I would break, which is so funny because the prayer in your book is break me. And it's just going to happen. And I just didn't want to be the girl that made a big deal out of this. Like, I didn't want to be the one who everybody knew was broken, or who everyone knew was going through something, because I don't want to be labeled as that. I mean, I still want to be Kaylee, and I still want to be joyful. And so I just kind of shoved things aside. But in your book, in the Break Me section, you wrote, when you're broken, you'll know it. There will be no question you will not have to ask. And so in the past 13 months, there have been a few very distinct occasions where it felt like God took a cannonball to that wall. And I remember one specific moment. Whenever you're a couple of years into marriage, all your friends are kind of on the same path as you are if they feel led. And so simultaneously, I'm going through this, and I'm throwing baby showers for my friends, but I'm good, I'm fine. And then one of my friends had just had the most beautiful baby boy, and my husband and I went over to go see them. And I was holding her little boy, and my husband and her husband walked out of the room. And all of a sudden, I don't know if you've ever had a moment like this. Man, I don't know how tender you are, but sometimes I can be very tender. But again, wall.
So pride can be surprisingly tender.
Yes.
Don't let the black jacket fool you.
Yes. I mean, you do look a little tough in that jacket. But whenever I was holding him, it was just like weeping. Yeah. I mean, like uncontrollable, instant. And I was like, what is going on? I'm strong. We're strong. We're good. And I remember in that moment, and then a couple of other moments, where the Lord just distinctly said, you have got to let me in. Like, I have got to break this down between me and you, because I need all of your heart. I need access to all of you. And I want to be there when you're hurting. You could have cried after month 1 and I still would have been there. You didn't have to wait to be disappointed that this still hasn't happened. And with my friends, you wrote in your book, we connect through common struggles. Like, what was I doing by keeping the people out who wanted to know what was going on most deeply in my heart? I mean, that didn't help me, and that certainly didn't help them, because me saying, oh, I'm okay, doesn't really tell them how to help me. And then you never know too, whenever you open up to somebody else, they might be going through the same thing too, and then it becomes a catalyst for conversation. And so again, I don't know, in retrospect, after reading this and really processing through, I don't know what I was hiding. And I'm so thankful that the Lord has just been gracious enough to show me that I was. And he's given me permission to, I guess, just be sad, but be hopeful, and change the way that I pray about this situation, but then everything in my life, because it showed me not only is this something that I'm trying to control my emotions about, but what else in my life am I trying to pray my prayers or do things my way? But it's had to shift in my heart and in the way that I live to just be like, okay, I can't. And I trust you, and you've got me, and 13 months is fine. A year is fine, 2 years, like whatever it is, like just help me know that on the other side of this, it's going to be worthwhile. And so I wish that it tied up in a bow. And I think maybe there might be some other people who share their stories while we're on set with you that, you know, they are on the other side of it. But that's kind of where I am. But I think reading your book and going back through and seeing your own personal experiences has helped me a lot to just identify where I am and resonate with what you said at the very beginning of God doesn't invite us to live a life of comfort. Like he wants to work through really hard things. And so I wanted to give you an opportunity to speak if you had any thoughts.
Well, first of all, my heart goes out to you. And we were, I think it was 13 months in without being able to conceive as well. And so I remember very distinctly that feeling of, where are you, God?
Yeah.
What's wrong with us?
Yeah.
Are we going to, where are you going to, and 13 months is a long time. And I know there's some people watching right now that that are waiting for something longer and in really painful situations. And it's so interesting that oftentimes when we're there, we do tend to withdraw and we'll like you said, we'll kind of put a wall up between us and God or even the people around us. And I think that's the problem with not being broken is at that point we still think we can handle things on our own. And we're not designed to handle things on our own. That we're designed to need God, and one of the ways God reveals himself to us is through his loving people. And that's it's horrible. Like no one wants to end up where you are at this place where you feel like you're on the edge of tears, and if someone jiggles you, the tears are going to fall out. And that's kind of almost an ever-present feeling. You just don't want that. But when you do let him shake you just enough to where the tears do fall, what you're met with a God who comforts those who mourn. And you experience him in a real way. And then the beauty of his people that come around you and just hurt with you. And not even like, I'm going to give you an answer like, yes, and you're going to be like us, you're going to have 6 kids one day. It might, the truth is, none of us know what's going to happen on the other side, but the fact that you can just come together and be with each other in the presence of a very real, very comforting God, it's one of the most painfully powerful things that you can imagine. When I taught this prayer to the church, my daughter Mandy said she was going to pray that prayer, and on the other side of it, she got sick. And it's like now we're I guess 4 years later, and she's still sick. And it's just like your situation. There's no bow at the end of it.
No.
And it's been the most brutal. We've cried more tears than you can imagine over her situation. And I asked her recently, would you change it? Would you, if you could undo it and go back to just a normal life, would you change it? And she just through the tears, she said, no, Daddy, I wouldn't. She said, it's been really hard. I wouldn't wish this on anybody, but I've never been closer to God and had the support of my community. And so it's through the brokenness that she found a treasure that she might not have otherwise. Yeah,
I resonate with that so much too. And it's like you can resist the brokenness and you can be mad and you can be bitter, or I don't want to say you can welcome it with open arms, but you can just expect it and know God's going to meet you. And the hard thing about your book, I think, is that there's no formula to it. There are 3 prayers, but there's no time limit on either one of those. And I think that this is the hardest thing to walk through, but it's all good. And God teaches us and meets us right where we are.
And I just want to say to you is that, I feel like we're in the presence of God together in this moment of breaking in your life. And on the other side, whether it's, healthy baby boy, healthy baby girl, 2 children, 3 children, 4 children, whether it's adoption, whether it's, it could be anything, that you will see the goodness of God. And the path between now and then may not be an easy one, but you will see the presence of God. And the next time there will be some point of thanking him, looking back, there was his faithfulness, there was His goodness, there was His provision, and I don't know what it's going to look like, but you know it will be there.
Yeah.
And it may be on the other side of tears, but it will be there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, speaking of tears, we're both a little teary-eyed right now, but I don't know, maybe you are too. Maybe God used this moment to really just speak to you in the middle of your brokenness and show you that it's okay to cry, it's okay to let people in, but you know, as you're going through this study, you're in the middle, and just take the opportunity to be in the middle and let God speak to you right there. I think this is time where we wrap up, and so I just want to say thank you. I know, before we keep talking anymore and any more teary, but guys, thank you for joining us this week. Thank you, Pastor Craig, for joining us this week.
You know, if you guys are doing the online Bible study with us, we are in week 4 of Dangerous Prayers. And so, as you know, we're still in Break Me. We're spending 2 weeks in that section of the book. And one of the things that you wrote is that in our brokenness, we often experience God's greatest blessings. So just talk to us a little about that.
Well, it's a promise that almost seems too distant to believe, or that's not a path that I want to choose. But I think anyone who does have the courage to pray, God break me, and is open to just a real transparent moment with God on the other side of pain, of failure, of setbacks. What we often do is a little bit like Peter in Scripture, when he was really bold and confident. He had something that was special, but on the other side of his failure, where he had to see the eyes of Jesus and said, I just let you down, and then was completely forgiven and restored. It did something in him, I think, that there was a path of normal success and forward movement couldn't have done what the breaking did to teach him the true grace of God and the presence of God. And so it's, again, no one just says, I want to have a horrible day, I want to have a massive setback. But I think that on the other side of real brokenness can be an intimacy and a strength and a spiritual confidence that you cannot discover on any other path.
No, I agree. And you know, I love to read that in the Bible, but then going through it, it's a completely different thing. It's like you said, is you just want to get to the end. Like, okay, let me get to the blessings part, because this is really hard. And
you'll find, I think, Melissa, if someone is going through something they thought they could never, ever survive, they'll say things, you'll hear them say things like, you know, I didn't know that there would be a strength to help me through this. And then on the other side, one of the most common things you'll hear is, I wouldn't want anybody else to ever go through this, but I wouldn't change what I experienced in learning to trust God or His people or what He taught me through it.
Well, I have a story where that is exactly what's been happening in my life. I thought a long time about what I was going to share with all of you today. The prayers I have been praying for the past 7 months has been for one of my children. I have 4 children. The youngest is 18, the oldest is 26. So they're pretty much grown and out and making their own decisions now, choosing their own path in life. And wow, that is hard as a parent to watch. You still have influence in their lives, but they're getting a lot of other influences in their lives that they didn't have, you know, when they were living at home. And I'm not going to be specific about the prayers that my husband and I have been praying right now, but this situation, what God has done in our lives personally, I wouldn't have thought 7 months ago that this is where we would be. So with this situation, in the beginning, I was praying, you know, when you get that news that it just confuses you or you weren't expecting. And I started praying, Lord, just help me. I'm distraught. I can't sleep. I'm worried. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't understand. Lord, just help me. And Lord, help my child. Just help my child. I want my child to come back to you, to trust you, I just want you to work in my child's life and want my child to accept that from you. And basically every day, it's almost like I'm just begging God to fix things and to make them right according to how I think they should be. And it was about this time when I heard about your book. And I feel like, you guys, I have the greatest job. I got to read this book before it was ever out on the shelves. Because originally when I started reading it, I was reading it to help decide, is this the right fit for our audience, and do we want to do this as an online Bible study? But as I was reading it for review, it quickly turned very personal for me. And I love when that happens. And that's usually when we know when that happens, we're like, oh, this is a good book. And so like I said, my focus had kind of been on, give me, Lord, fix this, change things. And through reading Dangerous Prayers, those 3 sections, Search Me, which we've already read about, we're in the middle of Break Me right now, and you guys, what's coming up is Send Me. Those 3 words have defined this journey so far for me. And as I was reading, I was like, okay, I'm gonna start being bold. I'm gonna ask God to search me. Instead of asking him, Lord, please do this, God, search me, know my heart, test me. If there's anything you want to reveal to me or about the situation or about anything, I am open and I'm listening and I want to know. And as a woman who works in ministry, what I realized is going to make me sound like such a hypocrite, because I work in ministry because I passionately believe in Jesus and the Word of God, and I want everyone to have that as their anchor in life. And yet here I was not trusting God at all. We read in the Bible, we hear other people's stories, we've experienced it ourselves before, that movement of God to get us through situations. But then yet here I found myself in one, and I was in despair all the time. And it showed in my work, it showed in my personal life. I mean, anyone who knew me could, without me even saying, could tell something was going on. But just that realization, it turned me from having those kind of, I call them crybaby prayers, instead of the crybaby prayers to like saying, okay, Lord, you've revealed this in me, I'm going to keep going. Yeah. So, okay, what's it time for now? Break me. Lord, break me. A scary prayer like you and Kaylee talked about last week. No one wants to pray, break me. Right. And you wrote in your book that someone said to you one time, you're like, okay, am I broken yet? And they're like, you'll know when you're broken. And I knew when I was completely broken because I was completely ready to depend on God. It's not working. My way is not working. And I'm wasting so much time. It was like I was paralyzed. I was just stuck in this paralysis, and fear was ruling my life. But it was in that brokenness that I found hope and remembered the hope that I knew all along. And there's a worship song called Do It Again. And we sing it a lot at church, and just the same words over and over. I've seen you move the mountains, and I believe I'll see you do it again. You made a way when there was no way, and I believe, I'll see you do it again. I thought, God, I sing that with such, I believe it. So I need to believe it, I need to believe it for myself, for my children, for what's going on in my life as well. God doesn't just do that for other people. Right. He can do it for us too. And so it was then that I was like, I'm still reading through your book. And we had already decided it was going to be an online Bible study. But you don't just read the book and go, okay, search me, check. Okay, break me, check. All right, Lord, use me, send me, But when I finally got to that point where I was ready to say, okay, I'm done, I'm ready, send me. But my prayers haven't been answered. I'm not on the other side to where I know what's going to happen, or, I don't know. And I don't even know in my lifetime if I'm going to know. I remember my grandmother used to pray for like an hour or two every night. And if you were spending the night with her, then you sat with Grammy and you listened to her pray for an hour. When you're 8 years old, that wasn't your choice of things to do at night. But now, I'm so thankful. But long after she died, those prayers, some of them she never saw answered. But I'm seeing them be answered in the lives of her children. That gives me great hope. So I was like, okay, Lord, I'm ready. Send me. And another thing in your book that you say in there is, instead of always asking God to do something on our behalf, then what if we dare to ask him to use us on his behalf? Those words were perfect, because when I didn't really know how to word, and ask God to send me, that was perfect. Lord, use me on your behalf. And so instead now of focusing so much on asking God to fix everything, I'm more in a place of, Lord, what can you use me for right now? And it's been so clear. In fact, it determined my word of the year is love, because I can love. I can love my child always.
So good.
Always, my child will always have a home with us. Will love my children no matter what path they take in life. And I can love even when I don't know what's going to happen. I can choose to encourage others. I can choose to smile. So many ways that the Lord can use, but I wasn't able to do that until I kind of had that breakthrough. And so now that is my desire for God. I still have my cry moments, but I have such hopeful moments. And I'm enjoying the people in my life so much more. I mean, I think I can see a clear difference in the past month just because I'm closer to God than I was at the beginning of this. I have to be, you know, I have to be. I'm getting up every morning. I'm listening to worship music more than I liked it to begin with, but it's just helping me to get through and bring that smile to my face that I wasn't sure could be there for a while.
Well, my heart goes out to you, and I think anybody with children, you tend to know that you don't write the parenting book early because it's just so complicated. Yeah. And if there is somebody who has a situation like this where you've got a child making decisions that you may not understand, or there may be someone that's facing a real financial challenge or a health issue, and what tends to happen is we think I can handle this, or it's the opposite. I don't know what to do.
Right.
And I would just encourage you to kind of do what Melissa did, and that is just go all into the brokenness and say, I can't necessarily fix this. I don't have the power. I don't have the strength. I can't do it on my own. So I need all of you, God. And it seems like even in the middle of your trial, you do still have a little bit of joy of knowing what can I do?
Right.
I can love.
Right.
And that's a good place to be.
Right.
And you're at a point of surrender where you say, I can't, doing this doesn't fix anything, but doing this and saying, here's my child, or here's my greatest fear, or here's my hesitancy, or here's my marriage that's broken, and I trust it to you.
Right. I've seen you move mountains before, and I
know
believe
you
you're
can
going to do it again.
Yes, yeah, that's
Right,
great.
right. Well, thank you so much again this week. Looking forward to another week of Break Me.